you crying, crying.
Hey everybody, this is me, as you can see from the very professional looking banner, Previn I.W. Taylor of the Double S Project. I'm rolling solo with this fantasy edition because, as we say in my job atmosphere, some of our guests have been overcome by events. My man Pete's not with me tonight, he's on business travel. And also Lanice Robinson, she is not able to attend due to moving, so her internet isn't set up or something to that effect. So week 3 is behind us, and it was a tough week 3 for at least 50% of you out there. If you didn't get a W, you got somebody hurt, or like myself, somebody put on the commissioner's exemption list. Yeah, I think this has been the craziest week in the history of fantasy football. I've been doing this for, again, like 17 years, and I cannot recall a set of circumstances like what we've seen in the last 3 days. But of course, going back to, of course, Friday with Adrian All Day, Purple Jesus Peterson. Now he's Adrian All Done Peterson. He's not playing for the foreseeable future because he had a Passion of the Christ moment with at least one of his kids and some switches or tree branches or whatever you hear from the media. If you're like me, you drafted him and you took him fairly early, which means if you're like me, you're looking at a pretty large void on your roster unless you just went 3 stud running backs right off the start. But I didn't. I tried to have a more balanced roster, so now my roster is unbalanced. That's in the league with the Girl Scout parents that I've been mentioning, or I call it the Cookie League. But let's get back to that in a few. Right now, how'd you do out there? Of course, you can't answer, but I'll just let you know I went 1-1. In the Double S Project lead, I lost on Pete Week to Pete Dukes, who's somewhere still laughing at me. Primary reason why I lost, and it wasn't by much, it didn't blow me out or anything. I had overall a pretty good day. I had Brandon Marshall that brought me back into the game, but when it came down to it, my matchup with Pete was over with on Thursday night when I played the matchup and went with Ben Roethlisberger instead of I went with Ben Roethlisberger against the Ravens defense, and that didn't work out too good for me. He turned in was basically what I call a zero burger, or effectively a zero. On the other hand, the man out with the Chargers, I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. I can't remember a single thing. Something is just not clicking for me tonight. Oh, yes, right, I'm shocked over Adrian Peterson. No, that's not what it is, but Phillip Rivers went bananas on the Seattle Seahawks and Legion of Boom, which nobody saw coming. So however many of you out there can raise your hand and say, yeah, I played Phillip Rivers and won, please do. I applaud you. Meanwhile, I went down in flames, or kind of went down like a limp noodle with Ben Roethlisberger, and we will try to avoid putting him in the lineup for the foreseeable future. So that being said, going on to the rest of the week, the other big story were the injuries. Some out there were looking at the Redskins game thinking that they were going to get some good points out of RG3 right until he dislocated his ankle. His status is, the doctors say he'll be back in 4 to 10 weeks or something to that effect. It's a dislocated ankle. He might as well have dislocated his head. I don't know if you're going to see him again this year. So that being said, there's probably something of a scramble for his backup, and I don't know how that's going to work out. Some people say he should have been the man to start off with, and some people are saying, wait and see. Some people are saying it's not going to work out. So then you had those out there that lost Jamal Charles, and you probably hadn't even had a chance to sit down with your snacks in the Chiefs and Denver game, and boom, Jamal Charles is out. There's almost too many members. Oh, who? AJ Green. AJ Green out. I don't think he even had any contact, and he was lost for a game. I don't know when he's going to come back. So, in a nutshell, as my uncle likes to say, you got a lot of people out there scrambling to fill some spots. Uh, Stock on Mohamed Sanu went way up. Um, Stock on Niles Davis way up. You know, so those are some of the names. If you hadn't grabbed Terrence West with the Browns, he had another good outing. Stock up, up. Um, so yeah, that's part of the main story for this fantasy week. That's if you weren't injured or you weren't lost, then like I said, there's a bunch of us out there that woke up and on going into week two, you didn't have Adrian Peterson going after the game. He was reinstated, but the future was uncertain, so you cautiously, optimistically insert him back into your lineup, as I did. And then you woke up this morning and found out, no, you will not be having Adrian all day Peterson. Please find somebody else to insert in your lineup. Thank you for playing. As it is in the Cookie League, I am currently the leading point scorer in 2 weeks without Peterson. I don't expect that to continue. Attrition's going to catch on. Bye weeks are going to start accumulating. Holes in rosters. I got a bunch of tough matchups with the Broncos I've got on my roster as it is there. So I am not optimistic there. But the big issue is I read an article in Slate magazine yesterday where the writer, who I am nearly certain probably doesn't have children as I do, and probably doesn't play fantasy football as I obviously do, was imploring all fantasy football owners out there. This is yesterday. Keep this in mind. To that they were morally obligated to drop Adrian Peterson in order to make a statement um, to the NFL and to the Minnesota Vikings, or to the Minnesota Vikings and the NFL, take your pick. And that struck me as pretty interesting because this has never happened before. Like, you could say the same question should have been asked with Ray Rice, but it didn't come up with Ray Rice because Ray Rice was terrible last year, and he was either going very, very low in drafts this year, or he wasn't drafted at all. So when Ray Rice, he got in trouble, people were already thinking in the middle of the summer, I'm probably not going to draft him. He's not going to do anything anyway, you know. So either they passed on him or he went late, and nobody had a problem with dropping him or, burying him deep on their roster. So it didn't come up. This is Adrian Peterson, who is going in the top three of all drafts. Everybody's basically building their rosters around him. So when somebody says because he abused a child, it becomes a moral imperative for fantasy owners out there to cut him from their rosters, it kind of lends a different perspective than anything we've ever seen in however many years we've all been playing. Now, me personally, I wasn't going to drop him. I still have him because, he could be reinstated. Could be reinstated in time for the playoffs. Heaven forbid I make the playoffs. Um, you know, the only statement I think I'd be making if I dropped him was, I want to lose. Well, he's not here, so I'm going to lose anyway. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, as a father, I don't switch my kids. That's it. I just don't. So, with that being said, what Adrian Peterson did, making him out to be a bad person. Look, the NFL is full of bad people. In 17 years, I've never participated in an all good guys draft. If there wasn't all good guys draft 4 or 5 years ago, Darren Sharper would have gone in the top three. If there was an all good guys draft just 3 years ago, Ray Rice would have gone in the top 10. So we see how that goes. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, you know, there's real morality involved in fantasy football. So I consider this from two perspectives. The first being as a commissioner, which I am as a Double S project. I did not broach the subject and have not. It hasn't come up on the message boards. Nobody has emailed me, texted me anything about what are we going to do about Adrian Peterson. Should he be reinstated, or if he hadn't been deactivated or suspended or exemption listed or whatever it is he's been. Um, I wasn't going to go into the league and say I think we should have him stricken from a roster and nobody could pick him up or anything like that. It's a free league, so there's no money involved or anything like that. And that's a different um, that's a different aspect too for those who are in paid leagues and keeper leagues where there might be some money involved. If you're a commissioner and you wanted to go and have Adrian Peterson removed on moral grounds, first of all, how would you go about selling that to your league? I mean, if you're a whole league of, say, priests or something, and those leagues do exist, maybe it's not all that hard. And if you're a league of priests, then there's probably no money on that, right? We hope. But I was discussing this with another commissioner of another league, and we were saying, it's funny how this guy could write this, but not actually really think what would go on in the behind the scenes from a commissioner standpoint. Do you go to somebody and say you need to get rid of Adrian Peterson because he's a terrible person? You sure didn't have to say that about Ray Rice. You know, what's the compensation there? If it's a money league, do they get their entry fee back, or do they get whatever it is they paid back for keeping him, along with some compensatory picks or something to that effect? It's just a bunch of ideas we were trying to throw out in a hypothetical sense. But like I said, in this free league, the Double S Project, I wasn't going to bring it up with the other owners. If the other owners decided to take it among themselves and say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable with Adrian Peterson being on a roster, my roster, his roster, and we all talked about and decided we wanted to get rid of him, I would support them. I would go ahead and abide by the wishes of the league. Now, with the Cookie League, if Adrian Peterson had still been available, it did occur to me, with the irony of me being 2-0 in that league and the leading point scorer, the commissioner approaching me saying, yeah, Prev, we had some discussion about Adrian Peterson, and, with all of us being concerned Girl Scout parents and how we wouldn't want to see something like that happen to our children, blah, 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 blah. We consider it morally imperative that, he be removed from our fantasy league. So you got to get rid of him. It's a free league. I'm still not sure how well that would go over. So maybe that's why you don't mix up Girl Scouts and fantasy football. At any rate, yeah, that's something different that we would have had to have considered. That some of y'all out there are considering this. You're going through this, and like I said, in 17 years of playing fantasy football, we've never seen anything quite like this. You get a guy that's hurt, that's part of the game. Jamal Charles first played first game of the season 3-4 years ago. Knee explodes. He's gone for the year. That happens. A perfectly healthy, arguably best running back in the league with the value placed on running backs is basically stricken from the game because he had a warped idea of corporal punishment, which is a different social discussion that not my place to get into, at least not right here. And he's not there now. What do you do? Well, of course, you do the same thing you do if the guy was hurt, but it just doesn't feel the same. So, oh yeah, by the way, even though this might strike some people as insensitive, it might strike some people as funny. Yeah, my reaction was to change the name of the team to "Mama Was Wrong" in honor of Chris Collins. I mean, of Chris Carter's rant on ESPN. I guess it was Sunday morning. I didn't see it. I was at church, but yes, the name of that team went from being Hanta Yo, which was Sioux Indian for "Get Out the Way," to "Mama Is Wrong." That's just a little nugget for y'all out there. Anyway, at this point, there's probably not a whole lot without my cohorts that I could really discuss in terms of the state of affairs, addressing all the rest of the injuries. Just so many of them. Y'all are aware of them. You know who's hurt. You know what you're doing. The trading scene is picking up out there as well. It better be with all the mess going on. But I just thought I'd touch on this unusual weekend and the ramifications personally and universally for that. And it's going to make things actually more interesting this season, one way or the other. Like I said, 2 weeks this guy could be back. Who knows? So we'll see how that plays out. In the meantime, thanks for checking us out. If you like it, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Follow us on Google Plus. Follow us on Facebook. We're Double S Project. We're on Twitter. None of us really tweet much, but if more people follow us, maybe that'll change. I'm sure we could say a whole lot more than we are about fantasy football. That's for sure. So anyway, y'all have a good evening.